Go fund me for Quilting of America. Link. Can we pin comments? Oh, we can. Yes. Okay. So now YouTube can see the fringe expert coat. Last March, I did an interview and they titled me Fringe Expert. And sometimes I like to be like, what would that outfit look like? This time y'all were like, you should make a fringe expert coat. And I did. And it has taken me almost a year. As you can see, there's a skeleton of a coat that you make. Really, anyone could do this, honestly. All you have to know how to do is a chain stitch on crochet. Or you could just take any kind of knitted coat, knitted by machine or anything, and you could tie. But basically, skeleton. And then I've just been hand tying these on for a year. Ooh. I know. It's perfection. It's perfection. I wish I could pin. I'm still learning YouTube. I wonder if I can pin products to the live. Because I bet people will like my If It Quacks Like a Cult shirt. I don't know the answer. Hello. Yeah, I had to get out of my comments because people are being silly and showing up and trying to tell me I'm wrong in my very uniquely qualified area of expertise. That's always fun. Oh. So today is this person in the Pacific Northwest saying like, the National Guards are coming for us. They're going to come for the blue states especially, and telling me that I'm being Pollyanna. And I'm like, and then belatedly they tell me they're an E9. They're a senior enlisted person in the something in Army probably. But I'm like, were you an intelligence officer? Because I was, and I do not think the National Guard is going to be marching down the streets of Detroit or DC or Seattle tomorrow. And if they were, we would still need the threat assessment. We would still need to be here as calmly as we could be talking about it. And also, while we were all spinning in conspiracies about aviation, because I remind you, Americans care more about an unalived pilot than 44% more than anything else on the news. So while we were all spinning in that, he took away the protections from 300,000 Venezuelans. Like, and people are like, you said the military would get involved in treason or in a conflict, not in politics. The military very specifically doesn't get involved in politics. If he's allowed to just completely run away with it politically, I'm still going to be here telling you that the military is not going to turn their guns on you, because they're not. They're not going to have to. So, my dress wasn't recognized. I think sometimes y'all be forgetting to give me your apartment numbers. So right now books are paused on TikTok because we are sold out until the 18th, and we are piecemealing books to get them out to y'all. And when they come back, they're going to be cheaper and unsigned and fulfilled by a company, because I have to get back to writing Quilting of America, which I did my go through of chapter 6, and it's good. It's about language and all these different ways that cults weaponize language, and I think every single part of it is useful, and it's 47 pages. And I've been told I can't have 47-page chapters, so I'm realizing that I'm less close to the book being done than I think I am. Just because it's going to take rounds. I'll probably start going all types of other groups in. Get jumped on Tesla already. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to take over the Treasury and the secrets. Still hope, people are here busy telling me I'm wrong. And also he backed down on Canada and Mexico tariffs, didn't he? Because you don't think the international community was going to let him start a war. And I love that he had to back down to the president of Mexico because that's a woman. My editor said I can't have 47 pages. Like even Tay, when she put out Torture Poets Department, everyone was like, whoa, you need to edit. And there's one song I would take out. Everything else is absolute perfection. But there's a reason that I don't usually put out things that I've written on my own, other than it's just videos of me reading them, because they sound choppy and like I'm the Sheldon Cooper of language. And then they go through polish. From Torture Poets Department, I don't like Robin. Like Robin just does nothing for me and I don't need it. And I skip it whenever I'm paying attention. Everything else, but also like I'm the kind of Swiftie that it's for, that album is for. Which is to say the one that has been growing up with her my whole life. So I know all the references and all the things. Okay. I was glad to see that she won no Grammys. I feel like she was glad to see that she won no Grammys. So I do sell some stuff. I'm still figuring out the best ways to get in touch with me because it's not really messages anymore. You could send a message to knittingcultlady@uncultureyourself.com. Something like this I would have to sell for $3,000 because it took me a year. So that is how I feel about that. That's why almost nobody sells crochet. Or like people, every time you crochet, people are like, you should crochet. And then you're like, yeah, but when I ask you for $500 for this dress, you're going to look at me cray-cray. Why can't we have 46 pages? Yes, and I love Diana Gabaldon too. But anyway. But I'm bringing in a lot more like other groups. Like in this chapter we picked on CrossFit and Soul Cycle, always the military. I'm hammering the point of the military and y'all just have to read it. I'm sorry. But people try to act like I'm just being fluffy and silly when I compare the military to a cult. So I am showing every single point in the military. And I mean, I'll still have, of course, the longer chapters, but also like the reason we love Uncultured is because Daniela did not write it by herself. Daniela wrote it with two other writers, one of which is now the editor of Culting of America. And she was also the co-writer on Un-American, if you've seen that video book in my Patreon. I'm like good with connecting thoughts and big idea systems and taking things from one and showing them in another world. Not necessarily the best one at putting it down on a page and not having it sound like ADHD brain. So I work with people. Yeah, so Gavaldon. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a full-time author, only because I'm at least part-time a content creator as well. And what is happening right now is a giant explosion in popularity. And so I'm having to try to build systems into what I do. But I write books, I read books, I knit, and I perform for the internet. And my performance is teaching you about cults and bad groups while knitting at you. Not retired from the military. I got out of the military as a captain after 6.5 years. Mr. Knitting Cult Lady, however, is retired from the military. And we just had what I thought was going to be a really cool moment where we finally found out what Captain Mestinek's exact intelligence specialty was, and that it was aviation, and specifically crashes and when rotary wing fall out of the sky, and that she was an intelligence officer for combat helicopters for 5 years. But instead, we found out that Captain Mestinek had a bunch of bros lying in wait to be like, aha, so you lied. So that was fun. Oh, this one guy was like, helicopters have radar, so I don't see why they couldn't have blah, blah. And I was like, oh, because you're thinking of movies and not Black Hawks. And he comes back and he was like, yeah, so I Googled and you're right, but, and he keeps going. And I'm like, yeah, I know I'm right. You know how I knew that you were thinking of movies and not Black Hawks? Because I used to be an intelligence officer for Black Hawks in combat. People are really confusing their Grand Theft Auto experience with people's careers. And it's been interesting. So I've also been doing the reading of this book called Conspirituality, which is something I needed to get to for the book anyway, but it seemed like a really good time to start bringing it up. Thanks. I love that I look like a yarn parrot. And I mean, I grew up in Brazil, so this is the kind of thing that just makes me happy. And they're called glimmers, by the way, which glimmers are the opposite of triggers, right? They're things that just make you inexplicably happy. And there's a really good book called Joyful, I think. Designing for Joy. It's by the CEO of IDEO. And anyway, I think that yarn and just being surrounded by yarn and fluffiness is like glimmers, at least for me. And then for other people, it's like everyone has this quirky woman in their life who does fiber arts, it seems. So I didn't do this with lash hook. Like I just did it myself with my fingers. Every single one of these is 4 pieces of yarn slip knotted on. Took me 10 months, 10 and a half months. This is why when people are like, what do you do with all the stuff you knit? I'm like, mostly I keep it. I also gift a lot of stuff. I also sell a lot of stuff. But that was my other hypothesis. I was like, if you spend enough time knitting and crafting in front of people, they're going to want to buy your things. Oh, it's the worst possible printer system. Okay. Been in a Black Hawk as a citizen. Yeah, I mean, it's just funny. And then people get like, oh, you're just trying to start a cult because you think your expertise is more important. I'm like, okay, look. If you're in my space, I feel like you should know what my expertise is. And then if you're going to come and tell me I'm wrong, you should drop your expertise. And if you don't do that, I'm going to tell you to sit down because I have some very specific expertise in this field. Grab my ladies. But also, having a strong opinion does not a cult make. And I think it's funny because it's obviously because I'm a cult scholar. So these bros, anytime they disagree with me, they're like, well, you're just trying to start a cult. And it's like, but like I always say, if you're not a cult or a cult leader, you don't have to tell people that. Like, and if you're free to leave, I've never had someone walk up to me in Kroger and have to tell me, ma'am, you're free to leave anytime. Like if you're free to leave, you just kind of know. I just realized I'm crazy. Crazy Yarn Lady is fun. And I made this coat because somebody called me a fringe expert in something. So this is my fringe expert coat. I have a Crazy Yarn Lady outfit. I took a jumper. It's hot, like fuchsia. And I cut off the legs and I crocheted bell bottoms, like crazy. It goes from fuchsia to yellow bell bottoms. And then I took the legs that I cut off and made a jacket and have bell bottom sleeves with it. And that's my Crazy Yarn outfit. But I better go pick my kid up from school in this today. And there will be many eye rolls from my child. Yes, it's pretty envelopes again. Of course, when we take off the plastic things, they're going to go crazy. But yeah, this is a pretty goofy coup. I mean, if he does it all by... Okay, look, nobody in the modern world has done a coup without the support of the military. And I've gotten to explain this a lot recently, but like, the military cult, which yes, I believe is a cult. And I make this joke when people are like, oh yeah, so who's the leader? I'm like, he's called the commander-in-chief. But actually, a cult can be led by a leader or an idea. And the idea that leads the cult of the United States military is the Constitution. And by, extension, America as an idea, which is what a country is. So, like, Colt 45 found out last time, to his chagrin, that the military was not loyal to him, the prez. That's not how it works. So I do not think there's any sign that the National Guard is going to start marching down the blue streets of America. And I don't necessarily agree that the more you learn about cults, the less likely you are to start one, because I always say, be careful. Like, cult leaders know how to be cult leaders because they all study each other and they also all practice a lot. But like, be aware of anyone that knows about the bad guy a lot, because then they know how to do it. Or it's really funny. When I was deployed as a captain, senior intelligence officer of my battalion, and this was when I met Mr. Knitting Coat Lady, and we're under this general schmex ban, and so everything is super hyper weird, and you can read all about it in Uncultured. And, at one point I'm having to literally have this conversation where my boss is trying to tell me to like, be careful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like looking at him and I'm just like, it's my job to look at the map and find all the hidey places and tell you where the bad guys are going to be. And you think that if I'm going to subterfuge, you're going to catch me? Oh, that's cute. Oh. Uncultured is an audiobook. It's been in the New York Times twice. It's one of the hardest things I ever did in 5 days. And actually, I am trying to push the audio right now because the paperback is sold out. I sold Jeff Bezos out of my book. Now they're having to do it just like, well, there's like limited availability of how many you can buy of Uncultured every so often. It's 100, by the way. I did record it in 5 days. I will never know why I was only given 5 days to record it, but it was difficult and intense. And sorry about that noise. yeah, difficult and intense. I was lucky that my therapist told me to take 2 weeks off afterward because I needed it. I just kept saying, like, I feel like I'm under concrete. But it was one of those things where it was like, again, I don't know why this decision was made, but we didn't start recording it till 3 weeks before it came out. And then like the director was going for a 2-week vacation to Paris, and then the book was going to come out. So there was like, unless I wanted to finish the ending with a completely different director, which is redonkulous, there was no wiggle room. And it was one of these situations, right, where it's like people tell you like, oh, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. But I was like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night emailing my agent, like, I'm breaking. What do I? And then I just didn't send the email. And then I just cult babied it through the end because like, what do you do? And also poor Brian, the sound guy. Nobody warned Brian. Oh, nobody warned the sound engineer about the book. And of course, like the director had read the book. Daniela has read the book like 75 times. But then, there's also like 2 really great times in the life of a writer. Oh, well, 3. I've had 2 of them happen. One is when someone vehemently recommends your own book to you. I had that one first. And then 2 is when bros mansplain your own book to you. Even Stephen King has had that. And then 3 is like running into someone reading my book in the wild. I haven't had that one yet. That would be fun. I have run into people that knew me in the wild, and it was my daughter's art teacher. And I regularly out and around in town here. I love embroidery too. It's just that like it takes so long, but now I'm gonna go get my embroidery. All right. Projects in this house. I've just learned that just like I'm never going to read one book at a time, I'm never going to do one project at a time. Okay, so this is the project that taught me I needed faster like mission completions because things that take a really long time are boring. But this is cross-stitched. It's approximately 300,000 stitches. And the whole thing was 1,000,000 stitches. And I got this far into it. And then I said, I'm done. And now I think I'm going to make it a pillow cover. I was going to put it on the back of a jacket also, but it's a little wide and I can't find the right thing. But I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do with it. I did make it. And this is like, I tell y'all, okay, so like art, very important to healing. My therapist regularly tells me like I don't have any clients that are doing a good job healing that aren't like doing art. And some people think like they're not artistic, but like you can do dot things, right? You have a pattern and you put this color there and then this color there and then this color there and then this color there. There's these diamond dot paintings. I'm illustrating to the tube. There's these dot paintings that you can do. They're called diamond paintings. You take like a little sticker thing and put it on, take a little sticker thing, paint by number, counted cross stitch. Like those are excellent things if you don't think you're artistic or crafty. Also something like this, like I was saying at the beginning, this is like a skeleton of a coat made by just chain stitch crochet. And then I just hand tied all of these on. I was like, oh, I could sell the coat skeleton, but no, it just takes too long. And then this is what I'm making. I'm about to finish this project. This is so all from 2024, I collected all my scraps and I made 8 balls of yarn. And I had yarn, and then I had thread from doing my crochet jewelry, and then I have fluffy. And now I'm just finishing this one. And it's so fun. And it's my craft journal. And scratches the Mexican part of my soul. This is another thing that would be like really easy to do. Anyway, I kept all my tiny scraps, and then I made yarn confetti from that, and then I poured that in, and then I put resin on it, and then I made some jewelry from it. But then you realize you make tons of jewelry parts, and you've only used up like this much yarn. So that wasn't as good of a scrap thing. And I love all the Miss Frizzle comparisons, and I just feel like we got to do the Disney live action. Like, I could be knitting and everything because, you know, she doesn't have to really drive the bus. Anyway, I'm going to go because I did everything I can and I have no books. But thank you for hanging out with me today. Try to not the conspiracy thing. What I'm like telling everyone to remember is that in every threat assessment, you have like the most likely thing to happen and then the most dangerous thing to happen. And like, we are all seem to be like living in the most dangerous right now. And that's like, you cannot get frozen there, right? You still, when you get a threat assessment, you're still 90% gonna go on that mission, right? Have to operate in this world. No matter what happens in America tomorrow, we all still have to be here and like function. So like, it's okay to look at the most dangerous, but let's not forget, while we're focused on 1930s Germany, all of the differences, and also that like dictatorship era Latin America is right here. Like, this is what we're going toward. You know, while we were all distracted about airplanes and helicopters, he took away the protections from 300,000 Venezuelans in our country. So, yeah. Last question I will ask is about salsa dancing. I do still salsa dance. However, I'm 37 years old. So like, I'm not usually going out at 9:00 at night. And I just need some 7 p.m. salsa dancing. Like, I don't understand why we don't do this more. America's not made for fun. When is Hispanic Heritage Month? It was a few months ago. It's like October or something. Anyway, there was a 5 p.m. outside family-friendly thing, and I gave Knitting Cult Baby my love of salsa dancing. And we just danced and danced and danced. It's also one of those things where I'm always like surprised that you like lose skill. You know, like I was once a competitive marathon runner, and I don't think I can just peel out and go run 6-minute miles anymore. But like, I always think I'm still going to be like a competitive level salsa dancer, even if I haven't done it in a long time. But, and then this is, since we've been showing off Mr. Knitting Cult Lady recently. Ooh, I need to put one of those videos on Tube. Anyway, so now we know that Daniela doesn't look like your average WASP millennial girl from Texas. But when I was trying so hard to mask and to fit in, I started having this problem where like men would think that I was the girl next door, demure and whatever, and I'm not. And then they would get mad at me. And there's neurodiversity in there too. But anyway, so I started this thing where if people would ask me out to dinner, I'd be like, sure, Ethiopian food, which is my favorite food on earth, tied with maybe Afghan. And like, if that was too much for you, then like, we're just nah. So anyway, so then we are deployed to Bagram, Afghanistan, and Mr. Knitting Coat Lady and we are walking to Subway for our second date. And I'm like trying to be like, how can I push him out of his comfort zone? Because we don't have Ethiopian restaurants here. And so I started talking about my love of salsa dancing, and like, without fail, I had never had a conversation with like a white American-born man about salsa dancing, and they wouldn't like lean away and be like, oh, I don't dance, you know, unless they met them on the dance floor. And Tom Young just looked at me and he was like, man, I can build you a dance floor. And I was like, oh, I'm going to marry him. And I did. And this is why it's so funny, because he's like, yeah, everything she wrote about the book about me is true, but like all the best lines I have ever said made it into the book. And that's why you're nice to writers. And if you are someone that is trying to write about your life, the final thing I will give you, people, we see people asking me why I'm not sued, or like trying to catch me making in holes about my life, but like, write your truth, make them come for you. Anne Lamott, who's a great American writer, has a quote that says, everything that happened to you is yours to write about. If people wanted you to write more warmly about them, they should have behaved better. And so I leave you with that. I love that you're working towards publishing about culting and parenting and teaching. Let me know if you need blurbs. Come check out on the Matreon. I do book clubs, Cult Memoir Book Club and Cult Theory Book Club. When I'm done writing Culting of America, I might do some writing like workshops. What I want to do is do so it's going to be 3 hours for we can fit it. So probably 3 hours once a month. And you come for 90 minutes, we're working on writing and prompts and the difference between show and tell and developing your stories, how to write a life story. And then the second half, we're doing crafts and we are brainstorming how you're going to sell your life stories or your crafts. Because that is one of my strong suits, and it's most authors don't, and artists generally don't like to be involved in the dirty business of selling their work. And I've been selling art since I was born. So, and this is also why I'm doing such a good job with Culting of America, because it needs to be good. I will be referring to this for the rest of my life. Okay, last thing, a blurb. A blurb is so here on the back of my book, we have Julia Shears, New York Times bestselling author of Jesus Land, who says this is a tremendous story of grit and determination. Publishers Weekly starred review, the best book review you can get. Readers won't be able to put down this harrowing and enthralling memoir. And here on the front, we have the New York Times, a propulsive memoir delivered in the honest tones of a woman who didn't always think she'd live to tell her story. So blurbs are what most people need to sell their books. Unless you are Prince Harry, then your book is your face and a photo of you being an officer. That would have not worked for my book because nobody knows who I am. So even once you get a book deal, your book can be not launched into the world if you can't get best-selling authors to say that your book is good. And that's really hard. And also I went through the writing process very quickly, 4 years complete. So just barely 2 years into deciding I was going to write a book, I was having to try to get blurbs. And that was where paying it forward into the writing community paid off. Because when I sold Uncultured for a life-changing book deal to a Big Five, I shared that book proposal with a community. When I came back later and was like, I need connections to these people. And literally one woman was like, this is not how you do it. You build your author relationships. And somebody else was like, actually Danielle is paid into this community. So she gets to get connected to Julia Shears, bestselling author of Relevant Book. And that's how that happened. So that's why it's so interesting talking about writing and publishing, because it's you have to be ready. You have to work hard. The reason I have a book is because I was a military plans officer and I know how to do that. Same going to be for the musical, but also you got to get lucky. I just got introduced to someone that might help me make the musical. So, there's all of these different pieces. It's not who you are, it's who you know. Exactly. All right. Thanks for hanging out for book stuff today. See you all tomorrow, hopefully to sign some more books.